Human security, human rights. You hear these terms thrown around all the time, right? But what do they actually mean for us in our day-to-day lives? Let's forget the big political speeches and the dense academic papers for a second, because at their core, these ideas are about something incredibly personal, just the ability to live a life with dignity, a life free from fear and want. So let's dig in and break down what that really looks like.
So just think about it for a minute. What does it take for you to feel secure? Is it just having locks on your doors? A steady paycheck? For a long time, the answer to that question was always framed on this massive scale. Think armies, borders, that kind of thing. But something really powerful has started to shift. We're beginning to realize that true security, well, it isn't just about protecting nations. It's about protecting the people inside them.
And that's exactly where we're going to start. We're going to explore this huge shift in thinking, this move away from a world defined by military power towards a focus on something much more personal, much more immediate.
Okay, so on one side, you have the old-school view, state security. This is all about military defense, protecting borders, high-stakes political deals. But on the other side, you have this newer concept, human security. And this isn't about tanks and treaties, it's about you. It's about personal well-being, freedom from fear, and freedom from want. And really, when you strip it all away, it comes down to one simple, incredibly powerful idea: the right to live with dignity.
Now, this whole new way of looking at security, it really hangs on a very delicate balance. But, as we're about to see, that equilibrium is incredibly fragile. So what happens when it all gets thrown out of whack?
At its heart, human security is really a state of equilibrium. It's this careful balance between what people need and the resources available, between our individual rights and our duties to each other, and between social order and tolerance. The main goal? Protection. Simple as that. Protecting all people from both physical and mental harm.
And when that balance gets broken, the consequences are, well, they're severe. When economies are out of balance, you get poverty and crisis. When we misuse resources, you get famine and pollution. When healthcare isn't available to everyone, you can get pandemics. And hey, even security measures, when they're pushed to the extreme, can actually create more violence and terrorism. It's a system where everything is connected and every part is incredibly fragile.
This brings us right to the heart of the matter, to a fundamental conflict that's been raging for centuries. If human security is all about protecting the individual, what happens when the rights of that individual clash with the power of their rulers?
This is a huge philosophical debate, and there are really two main camps. First, you've got universalism. This is the idea that every single person on the planet has certain rights that have to be respected no matter what their local traditions or nationality are. But then you have relativism. This side argues that local histories and traditions should be respected, even if that means limiting some of those rights. This is the argument you hear all the time from certain governments, right? This is our culture, or don't interfere in our internal affairs.
And this quote from Ramsey Clark, a former U.S. Attorney General, just hits the nail on the head for the universalist position. The whole idea is that these rights aren't just gifts from a government that can be taken away on a whim. No, they're part of what it means to be human. So, with this massive divide between individual rights and state power, how on earth did the world try to find a way forward? Well, they tried to create a global standard, a set of principles that hopefully everyone could agree on.
This idea didn't just pop up out of nowhere. I mean, for centuries, thinkers like John Locke and Rousseau were talking about natural rights. Then, in the 18th century, the American and French revolutions took those theories and actually wrote them into law. This all led up to 1948, right after the absolute horrors of World War II, when the United Nations proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And if you want a sense of just how ambitious this was, get this. The UDHR has been translated into over 360 languages. Just let that sink in. It is the single most translated document in all of human history. That alone tells you something about the world's desire for a common standard of dignity.
But the UDHR was really just the beginning. It became the foundation for what we now call the International Bill of Human Rights. This includes two major treaties, one that protects our civil and political rights, and another one for our economic, social, and cultural rights. Altogether, these documents create this powerful framework that's designed to protect our most basic freedoms everywhere.
But principles and declarations, they're just words on a page. The reality on the ground, as we all know, is often a very different story. So now, we're going to have to confront what happens when these principles are ignored and the devastating, all-too-human cost of that failure.
Because when we talk about human rights violations, we're not talking about some abstract legal theory. We are talking about real people, real lives, and unimaginable suffering. This is what's at stake.
In Bangladesh, the right to a safe workplace was ignored. A factory collapsed and more than 1,100 people died. A catastrophic failure of economic and social rights.
In Syria, a government used chemical weapons on its own people. Hundreds of civilians, so many of them children, were killed, a horrific violation of the most basic right to life. In Myanmar, a brutal campaign of ethnic cleansing forced over 125,000 Rohingya Muslims from their homes, stripping them of their safety, their communities, and their very identity.
And in North Korea, a UN investigation uncovered a system of almost unbelievable abuse. An estimated 120,000 political prisoners held in gulags, suffering from starvation, torture, and forced labor, a complete and total erasure of human dignity.
You know, these aren't just tragic headlines. They are stark reminders of why this conversation is so important. As Nelson Mandela said so powerfully, to deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. The gap between the world we say we want and the one we actually live in, it's vast, and the fight to close that gap happens every single day, leaving us with a critical question. What will it finally take to make human security a right, not a privilege for everyone?